Making video games is hard, especially AAA games that have huge worlds and incredibly realistic graphics, but modern tools have made it much easier to reach that quality. So I decided to test this by hiring 3 Fiverr developers with different budgets to create the same challenging superhero game and see just how close a single person can get to AAA standards in a limited time. And thank you to Fiverr for sponsoring this video. If you don't already know, Fiverr is a website with tons of great freelancers for basically anything you ever need, from digital art to music, but today we're focused on the game development category. Specifically, freelancers with experience in Unreal Engine 5, because that's the easiest engine to get AAA quality graphics fast. And don't quote me on that. Now, there's a lot of promising game developers on here, so to choose the best ones for the job, I decided to use Fiverr's level system and choose a freelancer from each one. There are 3 levels in Fiverr, the lowest being L1 and the highest being top rated, where you need to have done at least 40 orders and over $10,000 in revenue. So we can expect to get a really good game out of a top rated seller, with the lowest budget being in the L1 tier. And at the end of the video, we'll rate each game based on graphics, gameplay, controls, and the communication with the seller, which is a really underrated part about working with a freelancer. Okay, so first we need to find our lower tier developer, and I only have a budget of around $10. I know it's not a lot, but I'm really curious to see how far 10 bucks can go. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people willing to make a game for 10 bucks, obviously, but one developer in particular stood out while I was searching. Ask, pretty sure I butchered that name, from Malaysia, has experience in not only Unreal Engine 5, but Blender. Seemed like a good deal to me, so I decided to shoot them a message with the requirements. Now, there's a simple reason that I chose a superhero game for this challenge. It's apparently almost impossible to make a good Superman game, and I wanted to choose something a bit different than just a shooter where they could easily use an asset with barely any changes and call it a day. Is it a bit evil? Maybe. While we wait for them to respond, let's find our level 2 developer. Now we have a bit more options since my budget is $100. So I messaged a few potential candidates that had very solid portfolios. However, I decided to add a little bit more requirements to this project to see how they would react. Safe to say, $100 is kind of a low budget for a AAA game. Who would have thought? Getting blocked on Fiverr is another level of pain. Luckily, one developer named Mohammed from Egypt did respond and seemed rather enthusiastic to participate in this challenge. Although he thought the $500 tier would be a better fit, I was on a budget. So after some back and forth, we decided on $200. Which is still a good deal. It was a bit over my planned budget though, but I sensed some potential, so I went with it. Now, I'm not totally evil. I told them they can use as many assets as they want to finish the game as fast as possible, and that I was aiming for a more polished demo with good gameplay and good graphics. But now that we got our level 2 developer, it was time to find our magnificent AAA top-rated seller. A lot of hopes for this person. And with a budget of $1,000, we now had way more options. I found 2 promising developers with great portfolios. One of the responses was not what I was expecting at all, but while I was waiting for that, the lowest tier developer finally got back to us. Hi, sorry for the late reply. I think I may be able to do your project, but as of now, I'm going to sleep. It's 4 a.m. Okay. An honest person. I like it. And the next day, they sent an order for $5. Just look at how much this includes. And while I did accept the offer, I felt kind of bad because $5 is not a lot. And I told them I could do $10, but they said $5, and I don't know how to feel about this. On the other hand, one of the top-rated sellers and my first choice responded to my message. If you're interested in making a game, $1,000 will go a long way towards some good online courses. He's right, but still sad. Meanwhile, Ferrero, the other top-rated seller from the United Kingdom, expressed interest and told me he'd put together a demo first before making an offer. Now, I immediately saw the difference in professionalism between the top-rated developer and the other developers, but I was still a bit skeptical because I didn't have an offer on hand, and I had a tight deadline for this video and also a tight budget. But now I had 3 Fiverr developers all making the same superhero game. I'm really curious to see which one provides the most value for the budget spent. as the days progressed, I started to get some updates from the developers. Our $5 developer sent over some videos, and they seemed to be making great progress, but at some point, they got stuck, decided to scrap all their progress, and instead use a third-party asset with some of the core mechanics already in place. Then they started to work on the AI for two different kinds of enemies, a ground type and a flying type. As they finished working on the game, let's see how our level 2 developer is faring. I really liked how they asked me more questions regarding my requirements so that they could get a better idea on what to focus on. They even suggested using a previous game they had worked on as a template, but the whole point was to test their skills on working on something different, so no. As for our top seller, Ferrero is really good at communicating and understanding exactly what I want, and I think that's what set him apart from the other developers. Over a few weeks, he consistently sent me progress updates, seeked feedback from me at every major checkpoint, and asked me about the different features I'd like to see implemented. They were also the first one to ask if I wanted to use any specific assets, and I've actually been hiding a secret from all of the freelancers for this whole period of time. Unreal Engine 5 has a free city sample that includes a flying character with a lot of the mechanics that I actually asked for. So I told them about this sample, and over the next week they started to integrate the enemies and develop their AI. He chose a few different types of enemies for variety, from ground ones to flying ones, but unfortunately later on said that the city sample was way too big, like over 100 gigabytes big. And it wasn't very extensible, so he decided to go with a different map. Mind you, this whole time, it's been like 2 or 3 weeks, he still has not sent me an offer. You know how stressed I was? I had a deadline in like a week, and I had no idea how much this was gonna cost me. So I actually had to ask him to send me an offer because I was stressing out so much. But I was surprised that he only charged me $700, which was $300 less than my budget for a top-rated seller. Now, after a few weeks of development, all of the developers have turned in their projects, and it's time to see which one gets closest to the AAA quality that I asked for. So let's see how close 14 days of development and a $5 budget can get us to a AAA game. Now, I'm really impressed with how much work the developer did under the time constraints. The movement and the controls were really solid, and they even implemented a wave system like I asked for. Now, obviously for $5, we can't expect to have amazing graphics, and there are some bugs along with a lack of sound or visual effects. And while the communication could have been a little more professional, they did make sure to ask for feedback constantly, and the actual project was pretty well organized. So I think they over-delivered and did a great job considering the budget. Since that project gave me pretty high expectations, now let's see how much a level 2 developer could make with $200 in 23 days. I don't know what I expected, but this was way better. The graphics are insanely cool, the atmosphere is perfect, the little cinematic sequence at the beginning is so cool, the controls are really solid. I'm actually pretty sure this developer and the previous one used the same asset for the controls, but it works really well, and there's both flying and ground enemies. The sound effects and background music also give it the perfect vibe. Although there's only one way to attack enemies, which is the laser, I'm still extremely impressed with this project and how good it looks for such a small time period of development. Okay, so the expectations are like up here, right? So now the top-rated developer has to exceed these expectations because we gave them a budget of $700 and they had a whole 28 days to make the game. So this was really cool. And to top it off, Ferrero wrote the character controller from scratch and didn't depend on an asset, which is really impressive and is actually good for a project because you can expand on it easier if it's custom. So we can not only fight enemies on the ground, but in the air. The wave system worked perfectly, the atmosphere suits the main character, it has a variety of different enemies more than the other projects, and even a boss character, and the sound effects plus little add-ons like the screen shake and the user interface moving really really add to the game. Some of the environment is even destructible. And while there are some bugs, I'm really impressed at how this turned out. I think with a little more development time and budget, these last two games can really come head to head with a AAA title. You can find each developer's profile down below in the description, and I highly recommend all of them. And if you want to learn how to make games but have no idea where to start, you should totally click my video and learn how, because it's a good video. Goodbye.